If your only experience of mushrooms has been this situation, then that might explain why you think you don't like mushrooms. Most people can't digest raw mushrooms easily because they're built from chitin, the same compound that lobster shells are made of. I'm not trying to dump on button mushrooms, but there are thousands of varieties of edible mushrooms out there. Depending on the type, they might be floral, meaty, crispy, tangy, woodsy, whatever marketing term tickles your fancy. But to get those unique variety of mushrooms from the woods onto your plate requires 3 levels of expertise: foraging, cloning, and cooking. Fortunately, these guys have all 3.
I'm Kathy.
And I'm Ernie.
And we're mushroom farmers.
But first, a refresher on mushrooms. They aren't plants, they aren't animals. They're fungi, which are somewhere in between. They don't get their energy from the sun like plants, but instead absorb nutrients from other organisms like rotting wood or insects. Also, the thing we think of as a mushroom is only the fruiting body. Beneath the surface is mycelium, a web of thread-like filaments called hyphae. They do all the work of ingesting nutrients and breaking down matter. The mushroom itself only pops up to spread spores, the fungal version of seeds. Another side note, technically, the largest known organism in the world is actually a mushroom. It's made up of more than 2,000 acres of genetically identical hyphae in Oregon. Okay, back to foraging with Ernie and Kathy.
Being at the foot of Pilot Mountain, the forests that we have on the slopes of the hills on our farm are pretty old, so we've got basically old-growth fungus in a way.
If we could just sit out in the woods and forage all day, I'd be down with that.
It's like hunting for seashells on the beach.
You're just always sure. If you go around that next big tree, you just know there's something on the other side of it, or maybe just past that creek.
Disclaimer, one should never put an unknown mushroom in one's mouth. It's a good way to get sick.
There's literally nothing on earth that if you have to say, I wonder what this is, that you ought to put it in your mouth, right?
Most mushrooms that Ernie and Kathy find in the woods are mycorrhizal, meaning they grow in collaboration with trees. Trees give the mushrooms sugars, and in exchange, the mushrooms transfer nutrients to the trees. But tree-loving mushrooms like chanterelles are tough to raise in captivity, so foraging season may be the only time you see them. For the rest of the year, mushroom farmers rely on cloning, not foraging, for their livelihood. So, cloning a mushroom is literally what it sounds like. In theory, anyone can take a little piece of mushroom, feed it nutrients, and eventually it will grow up to be an identical genetic copy of the parent mushroom. But it's a little more complicated than that because in the process, you have to make sure that molds and bacteria don't grow alongside the fungus that you want.
Because we're going to be starting with filthy mushrooms that just came out of the woods. We want to make sure that we're not going to be introducing contaminants onto the agar itself. Eventually, it covers the surface of the agar. So once it's grown out on the plate, we can basically cut little pieces of agar and use them to inoculate sterilized rye grain. You can see that the mycelium is growing out. So they're little clones of the exact same thing, and they are bombs that are ready to be dispersed into whatever we want the mycelium to grow in. So it's like if you threw a bunch of feet and hands and arms and legs into a bag and shook it up, and they connected together to form an individual.
Creepy metaphor, but it works. After cloning and letting the mycelium grow out, Ernie and Kathy add it to bags of sawdust packed with nutrients for the final stage of the process. With the right amount of humidity and light, the mycelium fruit into a mushroom. The cool thing about cloning is that if you find a delicious tasting mushroom, you can cultivate that exact same mushroom and keep it for the future.
Every wild mushroom you find, there's genetic diversity. There are going to be differences in flavor and nutrient profiles. And you might find something really cool that could be exceptional.
We farm mushrooms because we like to eat mushrooms. You want chanterelles or should I?
You do chanterelles, I want to do pink oysters.
Okay, so chanterelles are a firmer mushroom. They've got that good nutty, earthy flavor and a little bit fruity. So when you smell them, they smell a bit of apricots and you get a little bit of that flavor when you eat them. Cook them at least a few minutes. They'll release some water and then cook it until most of that water absorbs again.
Hit me with some butter.
Add butter at the end or olive oil, it's delicious.
Pink oysters are a really fleshy species of oyster. The term rubbery is not a term I would use, but they're a little bit like that. They've got almost a pork-like flavor. Get them just a little bit crispy so that you get a little bit of crunch with them, and then it bursts, almost like eating bacon where you get that burst of fat coming out when you bite into it. They're spectacular.
Piopinos are another one of the firmer mushrooms, and they've got a good, just woodland, nutty, earthy flavor.
If you need a mushroom for miso soup, piopinos are the way to go.
Also with pasta, especially if it's a very light sauce, and a little goat cheese. Little goat cheese.
A few more things. You really can't overcook mushrooms because they're built with those tight webs of hyphae that don't absorb or release water easily. So they won't dry out and they won't get mushy. Also, you may have heard that you should never wash mushrooms, leading you to spend an annoying amount of time painstakingly wiping down individual mushrooms and using a horrifying amount of paper towels. But with most mushrooms you get from the store, it's fine to dunk them in water. They have special proteins that make them water resistant, which is why they don't immediately rot after a rainstorm in the woods. Also, it's okay if you don't like mushrooms, but you're wrong.
I think I would probably just be a puffball. I think I'd be a puffball just waiting for some kid to come stomp and make a lovely cloud to dance in.
I would be a destroying angel just because
Terrible
they're
answer.
tall and elegant.
Not that tall though, you're elegant.
The poisonous?
They are deadly.